Thanks for having me. My name's Sherry Owens, and I overlapped with Dr. Clayton for several years, and we are both townies from Morgantown, so nice connection here. And can I just ask really quickly, since we don't have a big group, are people in the School of Public, is everyone in the School of Public Health? Okay,
That's correct.
PhD group?
Yeah, most are from either MPH or a PhD.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah. So we can keep this informal. Please interrupt me at any time as we talk. And it's an interesting. It felt a little narcissistic to create a PowerPoint about my background. So if you don't mind me just talking, that I'm hoping that's okay. Okay. So I guess I'll just start in sort of how I got here. I am a data scientist at a company called Incyte. It is a I'm sorry, something just opened on my computer and I can no longer see this down. Okay, there we go. It is a small to medium-sized pharmaceutical company in Wilmington, Delaware. And it took me kind of quite a while to find the career path that fit me pretty well, and probably still finding that as we speak. So I actually started out, my undergrad was in environmental studies. I was a senior during Hurricane Katrina, and I thought, I'm going to go save the world. I'm going to be an environmental science major, and then I'm going to go, work in this area. And so, I loved it, but I, at the same time, found a passion for, anthropology and sort of the human studies side of it. I think like many of us that are end up in public health, we sort of have that in the back of our minds as we weave our way into that area. And, my junior year, was the 2008 crash. And it turns out that environmental science was not at the tops of people's lists anymore as something to hire for. And so I did enter a master's program back at WVU for my first year, studying in the Furneaux experimental forest. And I don't know if anybody knows where that is or if you've hiked in the area, but it's in Elkins, actually. It's a beautiful area. I did a lot of field work. So, sampling streams, sampling trees, bring them back to the lab sort of thing. And I realized how clumsy I am in the lab. I mean, I was a complete disaster. And so I, quickly, that was not something that I was going to be able to be successful in. I don't know if other people in public health have a similar experience to that, but a lot of what I did was just find out what I was terrible at and then have to try to avoid that. I did love the field so much, but I realized quickly I need to probably be inside, unfortunately, for my career. And I wanted to stay sort of in that environmental area, and I entered my master's in education. So I'm going to do science education. I love teaching. I'm going to coach softball, which I played my whole life. It's fantastic. Where I quickly realized that I cannot control a classroom. That is, something that is a talent that I don't have, and teachers are incredible. It is the hardest job I've ever had, and it's the most wonderful job I've ever had. But there's a level of exhaustion there that I knew was probably, my sister is a teacher, and she has that energy level that was not something that I was going to be able to maintain on a daily level. I still love teaching and still think about it all the time. But I still have back in my mind that interest in human studies. And during my sort of like capstone of education, they asked us to do a statistical analysis study. And that's when I started to really sort of like observe my classroom in a different way. And not just, how the kids were doing, but, how did they come into school? What, even down to like, what clothes, who were they talking to? What was their social network, and how did that relate to their performance? Were they on track to go to college? How was their behavior? Those sorts of things. And that was really sort of the catapult for me to go into public health, and to, when I applied for the public health program, pick social and behavioral sciences, because I knew that, and I think anybody that's been in a classroom really sees those differences, those stark differences in students and behavior and peer pressure, and the things that make all the difference, that are hard to address, but they're the problems that we work on in public health, right? So do we have, I know, are you all behavioral, epidemiology? What tracks do we have here?
I'm social and behavioral.
All right, everybody.
Social and behavioral, yeah.
Social behavioral.
Yeah.
Same.
All right, okay. So Stephen, I think I remember maybe interviewing you.
I was gonna say you looked familiar. I just couldn't necessarily place you. So I'm like, where have we met? So that might have been it. So
yeah. Well, glad you're here. Okay, excellent. Yeah. So entering social and behavioral, I knew I was interested in that study area, and I was also very adamant that I was going to be a teaching faculty. That was, I love teaching at the college level. There's it's different for everybody, but for me, the pace was something that I was more able to handle. The age group was more appropriate for me. It's not the same for everybody, but I really enjoy it. When I was in grad school, I unfortunately, the legend Ruth Kirchner passed away, and I had the honor of taking on her Health of the Individual course, and those were the best days of my career. I knew I wanted to stay in that avenue, but as I sort of looked out in the job market, I realized that and I think everybody, there are different experiences now, but there weren't a lot of undergraduate public health programs. That's sort of a new thing. I think they started that after I graduated, even at WVU, which is fantastic. And obviously there's a need for public health now, so you're in the right spot. But at the time there wasn't there weren't a lot of purely teaching opportunities. It was a lot of research one, like WVU, where you're heavily grant writing. And that's fantastic. But it wasn't, again, necessarily for me. And what I kept coming back to is I had stats. I'd had 3 stats courses before I'd entered at WVU and the PhD program. And it took a while to stick because I hadn't gotten an A in any of them. So please don't be discouraged if you don't think that stats is your route, because I hated it. But it just took a lot of head banging to where it finally clicked for me. I think maybe that's why I sort of have that knack for it, is that it took me so long to understand it that it's a little bit easier to explain to people because I know what the pitfalls are. But I just kept coming back to coding, and I just wanted to do bigger things with data and spend more time. And I was always blowing up my computer trying to download public data sets. And I don't know if anybody else has that experience where you can't pull yourself away from the programming. If that is you, that might be a good indication that data science is a good profession for you. Maybe not. But if you do feel like that, I'd be typing away, messing up. I wasn't even very good at all. But I just was so persistent with it. I just ended up over time, picking up a little more. And that persistence, more so than talent, was definitely what propelled me. And I had a fantastic advisor, and I had a fantastic group of people. Dr. Slulig was, pushed me in that direction because he saw that I was interested. And my advisor, Dr. Haslin Hunt, who is now basically working, he's in a different role, but he was fantastic. And the friends that I made, we sort of all got that opportunity to talk about what our careers were going to be together. And so you guys here, we text on a daily basis. So you guys are going to be friends for life. And so that was a really helpful experience for me. So I believe that the School of Public Health, I think Shay was saying at one point that there is R programming now available. Yeah, so it was just SAS when I was there. And that was my introduction. And so when I was I lucked out. A fellow PhD student of mine recommended me for a job at NIOSH in the biostatistics and epidemiology branch. And they taught me about SAS macros, and I went crazy. I wrote everything in macros because I decided that was the coolest thing ever. And so you can see a little bit of like a weird persistent personality trait maybe of people who go into coding, not talent. So if you do enjoy it, just, and you don't think you're that good, it's fine. You'll get through it if you like it. So as I did that, unfortunately, and I was going to stay there forever. Unfortunately, and there was a hiring freeze in early 2017 that I wasn't able to be turned over to a full-time employee, and I started to stick around. And I took an opportunity at Dartmouth. I emailed my former mentor at Dartmouth, laughing to myself, like, it's Dartmouth, they're not going to answer me. But I applied for literally, like, I can't even tell you where all of my personal information is when I went on that job search. I splattered it everywhere. I must have applied for hundreds of jobs. And I heard back from, I think I got like 3 offers, and that, getting 3 offers, I'm like, wow. But I did apply for hundreds. Like, my acceptance rate was extremely low. So keep that in mind. I know, unfortunately, it's kind of like a challenging economy now, but, don't get discouraged by that. Use your connections. If you're ever looking to come to Delaware, Philly area, you have me, and whatever small connections I have, but I'm happy to be of any help that I can. And so, yeah, I was at Dartmouth for a short period, but I had in that time period gone to a job fair in Delaware where my family lives, and my aunt had suggested to me, and I received an interview at Incyte. I just walked up to everyone at that job fair and I said, hi, my name's Sherry. You probably don't want me. This is a room full of PhDs in chemistry, but I can program in SAS. And I just walked away, and it was really out of my personality. And I think other people, probably if you're researchers, are the same, but it paid off. It was very uncomfortable, but I was able to get an interview at Incyte, and just hit it off with my first manager. And I worked in translational sciences. And I had a translational sciences course actually at WVU with Jerry Dino, which was very helpful in sort of understanding what that field is. And it was, not just bench to bedside, but bedside to bench. And so I was working in what ended up being like a bioinformatics / clinical role, where I was merging a lot of data sets. That legwork is a major skill if you can learn to merge data sets and not mess it up, because it's really, if you can figure out those pitfalls, like you're missing data, those types of things is a really great skill set to start with. And from there, I was in that role for 3 years, and I was doing increasingly more bioinformatics work. And for me, I have a science education degree. I have a biology minor, but it wasn't, it was the small molecular data, whereas I was really into the large scale. Just like anybody in social behavioral, you want to think in all of those ecological spheres. And I met someone else in the operations group that I was introduced to by an IT person in my area. And he was doing network analyses. And after about 2 years or so, he said, hey, I have an opportunity. And I currently have been there for 7 months. So that's sort of like my background of, scatterbrain journey to data science. But I will say it was, it took a lot of work that I enjoyed, but, it can be a competitive field. But if you find the right skills that you're good at, you can't do everything. You can't be a data engineer and be a data architect and be doing, you have to, learn R, eventually then move to Python, get focused one at a time if this is an area of interest to you. Can I just ask if anybody is considering or is, likes data science, maybe this kind of about it? Okay.
I may throw a question.
back on you, Sherry. Maybe, and I cut out there for a second. Sorry about that. But do you think you can explain the difference between kind of the biostatistician, bioinformatics role and what a data scientist does?
Yeah, absolutely, because I've done all of them. And there are a lot of similarities and there are differences. And I think there are some benefits to exposure to each field that complement the other fields that maybe that they don't even, we're sort of learning as we go. So bioinformatics has come a long way in really recent years. It's since being able to sequence the genome, there are a lot of opportunities, especially in oncology, for RNA sequencing of tumors, so genomics, even sequencing of DNA and things like Ancestry. When you give them your DNA, that goes somewhere. And so there are open source programs you can look into. Bioconductor, something online, which is the sort of like our universe of bioinformatics, where I was spending a lot of time, doing proteomic analyses. So a lot of stuff from blood work, RNA sequencing, which is, you have a massive data set, you map it to what you think are the appropriate expressions of genes, and then or transcriptomics, and then you visualize. So bioinformatics is really about visualizing. There's some great packages like complex heat map in R that has been useful to me even in doing my now job in data science, where nobody's really using those types of visualizations as well. I'm sure people are, but nobody was before I started doing this in my one department. So does that make sense for bioinformatics? Yeah, if that is an interest of yours, if you have a molecular biology background, or if that's something that there are a lot of certificates online too that you can pick up, and it's much more visualization, much less stats heavy. So I was in a role where I was like the biostatistics person, sort of like more close to, and that's more designing clinical trials and making sure they're appropriately powered. A lot of those roles require a PhD in statistics. So worked sort of as a liaison between the molecular group and the clinical group, because I could speak both languages decently enough. So yeah, the biostatistics, there are opportunities for SAS programmers in those areas. So if you have a base SAS certification, all of pharmaceuticals are based in SAS for the most part, and a couple in, R is potentially growing, but since SAS is not open source, it's more structured and validated for the FDA. And then data science is not statistics, and I think I'm still learning really what it means, but you're really exploring. And the way I like to think of it, as people are really into building machine learning models and AI, but we're not at a point of general intelligence, we're at a point of artificial rudimentary intelligence. So I think it's much more worthwhile to bring the visualizations and the aggregation of data in a smart way to a human being's brain so they can make better decisions, versus bringing really complex models to people that tell them what to do, where there could be like massive gaps in the data. But there's a combination of both, and some of the models that are being developed are really happening quickly. General adversarial networks, for example, were developed in 2014, and that was like 20 years ago in data science. So it's just staying up on the field and being aware of those. Does that help? Okay. And I have,
yeah, I think it does. Thank you.
Let's see. I have sort of a sort of set of lists of potential jobs in pharmaceuticals that I thought could be helpful. When you look for these things, there's medical affairs, and that's sort of an umbrella term for. It's really neat, where you can liaise with researchers and companies and help researchers, discover more about basic biology, anything from biology to epidemiology, that type of thing, and sort of reach out and make sure you're staying abreast of developments in the scientific community. Health outcomes and real world evidence, there's a growing interest in real world evidence because we can now collect it. So that's somewhat of a new field, but there's a lot of, I was looking through job openings to try to get a feel for what would be good to discuss. And real world evidence, they want a lot of SAS and R, and it's a little bit more out of the parameters of the structured biostatistical programmer, which is a great career. I also have that listed as a SAS programmer. And there are epidemiology jobs as well for anybody that's in that career. So you're, doing systematic reviews, phase 4 trials, that sort of thing. Those opportunities are there. And if you can only imagine the number of phase 4 trials that are going on with COVID, I would imagine that those opportunities are going to continue to develop. And for me, the reason that I went in, in the back of my mind, reason that I was drawn to pharmaceuticals was my mother got cancer my second year and she's fine. It was very early stage cancer of my PhD in public health. And I started really, I took a deep dive into oncology medication and pharmaceuticals, and, there have been some recent developments that have really changed the life expectancy of people. And it's been remarkable. And for me, it's been a really incredible experience to be on the side of hearing patients say that they've been able to go to their child's graduation because of the medicine that they were taking. So that's been really, I have really enjoyed that experience, and I know, maybe it's not for everybody. So putting that out there. And then I thought I would just throw together a couple of, I don't know if you can see over my screen. Okay. A couple of resources that might be useful. One is if you're interested in this, and keep in mind, I have a GitHub account. I don't have anything listed on it. But if that's something while you're in school, you can post, projects that you've done in your programming history to your GitHub account. And when you apply for jobs, they'll often say hey, what's your GitHub link? So it can be more like your art portfolio or something equivalent. That can be very helpful and potentially give you an edge. Our studio Python is also wildly popular and growing, and it's supposedly easy to learn. It's not my favorite language. I could, if somebody pulled R away from me, I could probably struggle and do my job in Python. But you can download all of these open source, try them out, see what you get drawn to doing. And I think the best way to learn is just pick a project that you have to do and force yourself to do it, and you're going to fail and it's going to be awful. But what you'll do is you'll end up being on Stack Overflow and searching so much I'm a professional Googler. That's really the secret of data science. And you get to the point where you didn't learn what you needed to, but you learn all these other things. So the next time you sit down to do it, you're going to have a wealth of knowledge that you didn't have before. So yeah, that's a great way to start. The next few are a little bit more out there, but there's a growing desire for people to be proficient or exposed to cloud computing. Like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure are the big ones that I see in job applications. So AWS is Amazon Web Services, and it's each of these are a suite of services packaged by these large corporations. And so it can be data storage, machine learning, calls to APIs to scrape data, you name it, they got it. So you can sign up for a free year, basically, to play around with it if that's something that you're interested in. I would really strongly suggest taking a course, though, if you're going that route. These aren't very intuitive these just aren't very intuitive. I don't really know what else to say. And I'm very much still learning in this area as well. And these aren't all absolute necessities for you to jump into data science, but these are just things that, looking across applications, machine learning tools, obviously R and Python are your main machine learning tools, but TensorFlow is also a growing, it's a way to train, recommender systems, complex neural networks in a quick way by taking advantage of your entire computing power to do these things that normally wouldn't be able to handle as efficiently. I think that's also open source. You can take it and download it. Spark is another programming language. It's not too complex, but it is for distributed computing, so you can do those really big data things fast. And then in addition to SQL, right? SQL is like, I don't know why I didn't put this, I'm sorry. SQL is like the absolute must on every job application, and it's not complicated and you can do it in SAS. So you learn just, select star from this data set, you pull up the entire table, start there, work on joins. That SQL is an absolute must. But what's interesting is that people are now storing data not in rows and columns, but in different formats. For example, in a node and a relationship, particularly for social network analysis. So like I could say Elizabeth knows Jonathan, and that's how I'd have my data stored, and I can pull it natively in that method. And if you look, like if you want to pull data from Facebook or something, it'll say like Facebook's graph, and that's what they're talking about. So the languages that works with, Cypher is one of them. There are other, and Neo4j and Tiger graphs are methods of storing that data. So these are just things to like keep on your radar, Google, check out, be familiar with if this is of any interest to you. How are we on time? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. We have.
I just left some.
10 minutes. Sorry, we have around 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was okay. 12:30. So I'll be cut out in 2 minutes for any additional questions or anything.
That works.
Okay. Yeah. So there are a couple certifications out there. These aren't things that I have, but I thought they could be useful to anybody, especially as the competition in this field grows. TensorFlow certifications, base SAS programming. There are so many SAS programming jobs, and getting that certification is a big deal, and that's a big step in that direction if that's of interest to you. And then Azure and AWS, there are these specialty certifications to be proficient in those cloud computing technologies. Yeah. And I think that was okay. It's 12:30, so I guess if there are questions or anything like that, that works.
I'm sorry, I'm joining from my phone. But something popped up on my phone. I apologize there. Thank you so much, Sherry. You kind of hit on a few of my questions. Definitely that last slide there with certifications, what kind of, anything in addition that you recommended. I think maybe one of my other questions that could kind of go along with that is what, kind of getting into this field, what do you think was the most impactful course that you took, during your studies that kind of aligned with this, that maybe maybe not the graduating students, but somebody still in the program can maybe have an opportunity to take?
There were a lot of good courses. Obviously, you mentioned the translational sciences course. Having that on my resume was a big deal, and I think I didn't appreciate it at the time, but it was a big help. Dr. Zulig's research methods class is also just a really good get under your belt, that understanding, and then everything that Krista Lilly taught has helped me massively, and I wish that I would have taken more of her courses specifically. Oh, and I would say my research rotations are what really opened my eyes to a lot of things as well.
Okay. Brenna, Stephen, anyone else? Do you guys have questions? Dr. Clayton, do you have questions?
I don't think I have questions. It's just great to sort of see what you've done after graduation, and the sort of circuitous path that you took to get there. It's great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I just, please, circulate my email if anybody is interested in learning more or just chatting about what it means to, do this stuff. Let me know. I would be happy to discuss.
That'd be wonderful. And can you send us that PowerPoint too? I think that would just be really helpful to have those links, especially for the certifications.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Let me know how they go because I haven't taken any of them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Plan to. Yeah, that would be great.
Are there any other questions from anyone?
I didn't have any specific questions, but thank you for, it was very informative, very nice to see what you've been able to do with your career, especially since, I met, probably at the end of your program and then coming in and going through mine, just seeing, where people have come. So that's really great to see that. So.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me. And it's exciting. I mean, I'm glad you're here and I'm excited for all of you guys entering the field, especially public health is like anybody, I mean, it's so needed right now. So, good job and stay safe.
Absolutely. You too. Any other questions, John, or anyone else?
Doesn't appear so. So thank you again, Sherry. We really appreciate it. And this video, we'll post it on our website and circulate it around along with your email, if that's okay, like you said.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Thank you.